Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, the liberal loudmouth, and as always, I am here with.
The real Ron is here, but I'm kind of underdressed today because I was having computer technical difficulty, if that's even a word. So I had to drop my green screen and put up the American flag because that's what I do. So it's good to see you again. We ain't had one of these in a while, Tim.
Yeah, it's been like 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
But today's going to be a good one. We got a special guest today, as you guys are aware from the video event that we put on. We have Jerrod Sessler coming on. He's running against Dan Newhouse in the 4th Congressional District out of Washington. So I don't think I need to say anything more. We'll just bring him on the show. Welcome, Jerrod. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on here.
We're good. We're glad that you showed up and wanted to give you a moment to, tell everybody your platform, what you're all about, what you stand for. We're happy to hear it.
Yeah, I'm a conservative from Central Washington State. Most people think of Seattle and rain, but what most people don't know is there's a mountain line that goes right down the center of Washington, and everything to the east of that is a lot of desert. There's a lot of farmland and a lot of dry weather. We get about 10% of the amount of rain that they get on the west side of the state over here. And there's a lot of conservatives over here. For the most part, they're majority conservatives. In fact, this district, Washington's 4th district, is the most conservative district on the West Coast and one of the most conservative in the whole country. And that's shocking to most people coming from Washington State. But there are some good people here, just like there is in California and many of those other crazy states. So
easy. Let's not get carried away talking about California now.
So I'm a strong conservative, Christian veteran, family man, businessman. Been married for 28 years. We homeschooled 3 kids who are now all raised and out on their own. And I wanted to jump into politics in 2012 when Obama was reelected because I was just so disgusted with the weakness that he projected over his term. And but my kids were young at the time, and I just, I'm an engineer. I'm very pragmatic. I also felt like I had a lot to learn, and I wasn't really as pissed off then as I am now. And just watching the depravity of what's going on in our country at the hands of, a lot of these people who they obviously have never read the Constitution. They don't care about the blood, sweat, and tears that were shed in order to give us our freedom. And I have a pretty amazing life just in terms of everything I've been through, raised in a broken family, ended up having a successful marriage and raising kids and engineering degree. And I used to drive race cars and kind of lived my dreams doing that, and had very successful business for about 25 years. Employed, hundreds and hundreds of people. And I just feel like all of that is good fodder to be a good politician, to be a good representative of the people. And so I'm just working hard, trying to take out this.
I'm sorry. I don't mean, have you ever served in a political, are you like a politician at all?
No.
Have you ever?
No.
Okay.
The only role I've ever served. Yeah, the only role I've ever served is a PCO. So that's our foundational political position, which you guys probably know of. The counties are divided up into precincts, and each of those precincts has a representative, about 1,500 people in those precincts. And that's the only thing I've ever done. And that is, it is a elected position, but it's quite different than this. No, I don't think, a lot of people have told me like, oh, you should start with, state representative or, commissioner or city council or school board. It's like, yeah, that's fine. But right now our country is on basically a dumpster fire, and we need some really good, smart people that can problem solve to go and help fix it. And so that's essentially what I'm doing. I very much agree with the Republican, even a lot of the libertarian views in terms of, small, limited government and, a government by and of, the consent of the people. I think that our country is federally, especially, is responsible for keeping us safe. If you read the Declaration of Independence, that's very clear. And anything that they do beyond that is likely an intrusion that is unconstitutional. So I'm going to fight for the people and defend our natural rights as I see from God.
You're coming right at Tim talking about the Constitution. He loves that thing.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've read it.
Yeah, I keep those little flip books
Pocket
handy.
Constitution.
Yeah, I'm constantly referencing it, and even the Declaration of Independence is very telling. I'll just say this just real quick because it's really important, but there's a little section in the Declaration of Independence that says, in so many words, it's a lot of old English, but it says, in the midst of tyranny, men will do nothing. And in men, it's saying people, humans, mankind. And it's interesting. It's like, what? Men will do nothing. But then the next sentence, it says, until such time as the tyranny becomes insufferable. And then men will stand up, and it says it's not only their responsibility, it's not only their right, but it's their responsibility to stand up and throw off the bonds of the tyranny, that tyrannical government. And then it says, and they will establish a new government that will, and this is the key, that will ensure their future security. The responsibility of the government, especially the federal government, is to keep us safe. And when you look at what's going on in our country today, defunding the police, open borders, we are not safe. We have never been this unsafe, which means the government gets a complete F for the last however many years.
Yeah, in Louisiana, matter of fact, I just read the other day, their governor declared a state of emergency because of a staffing shortage of police officers. I think they'd lost like 40%.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty common around the. Do you know of, in your state, have you guys been losing officers, just either retiring or quitting?
Yeah, so we had a bunch of stuff going on. First of all, remember, what was it called? The Summer of Love.
That was the BLM riots.
Yeah, that was in Seattle, and they actually took over several blocks. They called it the Chaz or something like that.
Right.
And then I think the Seattle police, if I remember right, I heard a few weeks ago, they're 700 officers short. I'm not sure how many they have. I think they have a couple thousand, but that's a huge, percentage. And then the other thing we had is, our governor was completely all in on this emergency powers and everything. He actually had emergency powers for, I think it was 2.5 years. And so they lost a significant chunk of the Washington State Patrol because they were required to get the jab. And so, yeah, we're short for sure on staffing. And here's the thing, guys, and this is bigger, the bigger issue, and this is tends to where I tend to take things, is the bigger issue is probably all three of us at some point when we were growing up, we either dreamed of becoming a police officer or a firefighter, or we certainly had a buddy that did. Today, do you think that kids are growing up with that same mindset towards those types of roles? And I would question it. And that is a huge problem. When Trump was running in 2016, I did a series of videos explaining why I felt like we needed to vote for Trump. And it was based kind of, I'm a business guy, right? It was based somewhat on who I thought he was, or I thought he would be as a leader. It was also based in the fact that I was completely freaked out about HRC getting elected. That was, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine that.
I think all of us were.
Yeah, but my point with that is the number one reason, I had 5 reasons. You can go back on the YouTube and look at these, but the number one reason why I thought we should vote for President Trump was because of Supreme Court picks. And sure enough, he ended up getting 3 Supreme Court picks in his first term. And that right there that's me. My brow is up. I'm looking out decades. I want to know what's going to be left here when our kids are our age. What's going to be left when we're the grandparents or even beyond that. And so a lot of I'm willing to go and slog through the mud in order to make sure that our long-term security is there.
Sure. Now, as it relates to police, people that were saying defund the police, even as a liberal, I thought that was stupid. Just because, you need the police. I mean, you defunding them isn't going to help. But there is also, at least in my opinion, some truth to the fact that some police officers need to be held accountable for bad things that they do, because they make other officers look bad, and then everybody starts getting lumped in together. Like people look at me like a California liberal, but I'm not, that far gone. So it's the same with the police. Do you think there is a route where we can say that both things are true, that you can't defund the police, but you can put in common sense reforms to ensure that, you know, police aren't being overly aggressive or, you know, trampling on people's constitutional rights, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I agree. I would go back to what I just said too. There's 2 or 3 things here that come to mind for me. But the first thing is, you know, the government is there. The police are hired, right? They're basically paid for by tax dollars, so they're part of the government, you could say. The police are there to keep us safe, to protect us, and to maintain order. But I want to be clear about that and dive into something else. But before I do, I'll say I agree with you. But I think no matter what you do, you're always going to have some bad apples, even in
Sure.
even elected positions in police and whatever. You're going to have those. So you have to have accountability. And I think a lot of the test cams and different things that are going on, they've simply highlighted a lot of stuff that's going on, but it allows them to hold these folks accountable and get them training and stuff like that. But castrating them and defunding them and doing all this stuff, I mean, that's just dumb. It prevents them from doing their job. It gives them a bad attitude. It makes them turn the other shoulder and look the other way. And it doesn't improve our circumstance. But here's the biggest thing. And I'm sure that you guys have heard of this, but there's this thing called the social compact. And if you read the Federalist Papers, you go back in history, the social compact is essentially like the golden rule between citizens. It says that I will not violate your rights and you agree not to violate my rights. And what the reason that plays into this discussion is because people think that the police are there to prevent bad things from happening. But that's not true. That's actually not true. We are here to prevent bad things from happening. We're here to make sure that we don't do anything bad. That's our responsibility individually, and that's what the social compact says. And if you look at America, this is one of the biggest problems with open borders is those invaders, they don't understand the social compact. They don't understand our way of doing life. And essentially, well, what's the police for if they're not there to prevent people from breaking the law? Well, what the police are there for is to execute justice when somebody breaks the social compact. Then the police step in and they put them in handcuffs. Now, did the police take away their rights? No. They gave away their rights when they violated the social compact. They violated someone else's rights, so they gave away their own. And that's the reason why they have the handcuffs on, and that's the reason why they go to jail.
Hang on just a second, because I want to touch on this for sure, because I don't know if you know this, but I just got out of jail in May. I was there like 4 days, but I want to speak to that point real quick. But we have people that comment and watch the show all the time, and we got some new followers here.
I got to put Lane's up. Every guest we have on,
this dude,
Lane comes in and he asks the same question, so it's just part of the deal. He asks,
Lane Brown, go ahead.
Do you believe in aliens?
No, I believe in the Bible. My entire framework is based on the Bible, and I think
you would get along with Lane then, because Lane is I think he's the chairman of the Oklahoma High School Republican. He's been to CPAC, loves him some Donald Trump.
You going to CPAC this week?
I don't know if he's
CPAC this week, Lane.
Yeah, Lane, are you hooked up there? We sent him last spring, I think. Wasn't it last spring, CPAC?
I think it was. Yeah. He went up there he was up there for a week, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was up there for a while.
Yeah.
Now, back to the jail thing, and you're talking about the social compact, and I agree with what you're saying. But there are instances like last summer, May, I think it was May 21st. My wife and I had separated, and I was staying at the house part of the time. She was there, and she was working, and I was working. But I went over on a Sunday and to pick up my son for baseball practice, and went in the house like I always do. It's where I got my mail. It's where my license said I lived, and went upstairs looking for Barrett, and he wasn't there. Nobody was home, so I left. Went on to baseball practice, which I coach. Went on to baseball practice, and then after baseball practice, I went back by to see if I was going to have to keep him that night or take him to school the next morning or whatever. And what was it, like 7 or 8 minutes, Tim?
Something like that. Yeah,
7 or 8. From the time I pulled in and parked, I was on my knees with the draw down on with guns.
And he had the SWAT team. I put the video out. I had to do an open records request to get it.
When you say that somebody makes a decision and they lose their rights, nothing I did was illegal. It was all dismissed. I had to wear a damn ankle monitor for 3 months.
Right.
because our justice system just sucks.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
And in the comments, if you didn't break the social compact, then that's injustice at the hands of our justice system. That's a whole different topic. I'm talking about people that actually broke the law. They actually harmed someone. They actually, they did something that,
Oh, you were talking about that Chaz place?
Yeah.
You could visually see people destroying shit. No, I mean, why not just go there and
that was crazy.
There were people that got killed in there. I mean,
that was wild.
They're walking around with AR-15s and all. I was like, wow, man.
Did you ever go walk the Chaz?
No. I live in Eastern Washington, so it would have been quite a shag. I do go over there quite a bit, either flying out or, doing different things, but I didn't go at that time. And, I probably would have, I was just at the border last week, and about 200 invaders climbed over the wall about a mile up, and I just stood there and waited for them all to walk towards me. I didn't know whether I was going to die or,
Let me ask you this. So you've been to the border.
Uh-huh.
We both speak to representatives here in Oklahoma all the time. They've been down to the border and stuff. And our Senator Lankford is getting beat up by Oklahomans, Republicans here, because he's trying to do this bipartisan bill with Chuck Schumer. And it's an election year, and we all know that everybody plays politics, and I think that's bullshit, and they shouldn't do that. But I guess I made the mistake, like everybody else, is I didn't read his actual bill, and I just thought that he was just opening the border to make law that says that 5,000 people can break the law every day. But in fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, what the bill says is they're coming across regardless. So once it reaches 5,000, then we completely shut the border down for at least 2 or 3 weeks until we can figure out how to process these people. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I know that the border problem has been a problem, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. We're going to have that problem. Building a wall, I love the idea, but you can't make everybody happy, I guess. What do you think solves the border problem?
Well, here's my take on it, and I don't, we don't have to belabor all the different issues. And I will say I appreciate you talking about Lankford's bill, because I think that it is misunderstood, which is common with the bills. And then the elected, even the good guys, tend to get beat up because people don't understand what was going on. But here's what I think the problem is. I think what Congress needs to do is they need to figure out a way to rein in the authority that the executive branch has to be able to set policy that violates the law, because that's exactly what we're seeing right now. We again, it goes back to my big issue, and I even started with this, with the quote through the Declaration of Independence. The federal government's primary responsibility is to keep us safe. Of course, that includes the border. And so, I don't think Lankford, I don't think anybody would disagree, especially on our side, that says we ought to have everyone that's coming across the border going to a legal port of entry and going through the process that is set up for that. The question is, why is it that with essentially no laws changed, you can have an open border policy under Obama with complete weakness for 8 years, and then you have Trump comes in, and within a few months, he reins that thing in with some executive orders and gets the border closed, the Remain in Mexico policy, a bunch of different things that he did, obviously calling the CBP folks and state troopers to exercise their responsibility to keep the border secure and keep Americans safe. And then you go back, you jump into the first few weeks of Biden, and I was at the border talking to some CBP folks right after, a few months after Biden was in office. And they said, it was like they just unloaded the spigot. It was way worse than what it was when Obama was in. And again, this is all happening without any real law changes. So why is it that the executive branch has, now I believe the executive, the chief executive, the president ought to have the responsibility and the authority to be able to run the country and have some flexibility with that, but not to violate the law. And so they're essentially using government paid employees to direct them into mechanisms and policies and programs that violate the law. And I think that Congress should rein that in. That's what I think that we should do.
Yeah. So what do you think that Biden is doing that is causing, if that's what you believe is happening, what do you think Biden is doing that's causing this increase in migration?
It's not what I think, it's what I know. I know exactly what he's doing. He has the people. Biden, as the president, even if you're illegitimate, you still have the largest workforce in the government underneath your authority. And what he has done is he has basically told the CBP to stand down. And as a result of doing that, even if they were at full force and they wanted to do their job, which I think a lot of them probably do, they couldn't do it because he has sent a handwritten, hand-signed invitation to every country in the world to send their dirt bags to our border to come across the border. We can only do so much. What are you going to do? Line up, 50,000 CBP agents all along the border and have them stand there with guns? I mean, we just can't do that. The border is porous. And when you send out this customized, personalized invitation to everybody in the world to come here, I mean, we have countries that have emptied out their prison systems and put them on buses and planes to send them to the United States because they know that we'll pay for them. You know what I mean? So that's what Biden has done. Now, why he's done it, that's a whole nother, topic.
I will say this. Tim and I disagree on this quite a bit, but I don't think it's America's responsibility to take care of the rest of the world. I do think that we have to invite people in that want to do it the correct way, the proper way, the legal way. I totally agree. If you shut down the border completely, you would still have tunnels dug and drugs coming in, and that's just fact, regardless of what president is there. But I don't have an answer for a congressman or anybody in Congress that says this is how we stop the border, because we even have people coming across the Canadian border. We do. We don't have them in tens of thousands like we do in Mexico. Yeah. This is what me and Tim disagree. I like the fact of Trump's policy where he wanted Mexico to stop, because they're not coming from Mexico. They're coming from Central America, right, but they're traveling through Mexico to get to the United States. So why not just stop them at the Mexican border instead of letting us deal with it?
Yeah, the southern Mexican border is a lot smaller than the northern Mexican border. Just look at the map, so you could build a nice wall across there, and maybe even put a U.S. military base on that border, and you could stop a lot of this. Here's another thing that most people don't know. The United States gives the UN about $3 billion a year in cash. And on top of that, they offer military services. So that's who knows how much more money we're spending for the UN. The UN, you guys know where the Darien Gap is?
I don't.
Between Colombia and Panama. So it's basically an impassable jungle on the north side of Colombia that it's not, I shouldn't say impassable. It is not, there's no highway there. There's no road. It's a dense jungle that you have to basically fight your way through. Well, guess what? The UN has set up shop there with humanitarian aid and supplies to help people get through the Darien Gap. So let me get this straight. We're sending our tax dollars to support the UN, and the UN is then taking that money to the Darien Gap to set up humanitarian aid to make sure that illegals that are coming from all over the world into Central and South America, in this case, South America, because Ecuador is, you don't even have to have an ID to fly into Ecuador, for example. And Ecuador is right next to Colombia, and you go through Colombia right up into the Darien Gap, and then you go right through Central America. This is where it's our tax dollars. This is the sick part about it. Our tax dollars are actually funding this. And what's even worse is it isn't even actually our tax dollars. It's our credit card. It's our US America credit card that they're getting out and they're swiping it every single day on the backs of our kids' future and our grandkids' future. We're losing $2 trillion a year. And I cannot imagine how any congressman can walk onto that floor. Thomas Massey's a friend of mine. He has the little debt clock that he wears. Everybody should have that. Here's how much money we're losing today. Why? Because that body can't balance a budget. We have to do it at home. Every business in this country has to do it. Why on earth does Congress not have to balance their budget?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a topic of discussion under every administration since I've been alive, whether it was a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
But speaking to the UN and the Darien Gap, do you think that if you had the resources and ability to save somebody's life, would you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. But kind of go, back to what Ron was saying. The United States is not responsible for everybody in the world. Let me just give you an example. When you go back to 2020, and it was the first quarter of 2020 when they started putting all the COVID stuff on TV, and we had this top header on the TV that showed this flashing red button and flag and light about how many people died that day. That freaked people out. That was scary stuff, right? But they didn't bother to tell you that 150,000 people die every single day in this world. They just marketed it because they wanted to sell fear. And the thing is that bad things happen all across the world. It's not America's responsibility to fix all that and to be the police of the world. And even if you did want America to fix all that, wouldn't you need to have a strong America? Or wouldn't you want to have good policies that build on the things that has made America strong so that we can be prosperous and not be in debt and not be yoked to other countries that maybe don't necessarily agree with us, instead of, weakening America so that because globalism doesn't care about all that stuff. Right. And so I get what you're saying. I get the line that you're going on, but it's not America's responsibility.
I mean, then whose responsibility is it?
It's humanity's responsibility. It's not,
which
it's
is
not
the United Nations. Is that?
Yeah,
it was the United Nations that did it.
It is, but I'll just tell you, the United Nations freaks me out. And if it was up to me, I would pull the American funding from the United Nations. And for the single reason is, if you go look at their website, because I used to think, well, what is the United Nations? Is this organization of people throughout the world that, they get together and they try to maintain some level of humanity with our disagreements, and just make sure that we have this set of ideals that when we're going to disagree, we're not going to violate these, humanitarian things, and we're going to kind of go about it in this way, and we're going to try to, use sanctions and use, policy and negotiations to kind of prevent people from dying and all this kind of, like, we all agree with that. There's no problem. The thing is, when you go to the UN's website, go look at their org chart. They have basically set themselves up with almost all the funding that's come from the United States as a global governance organization. And that makes me sick. And that is something that we should not be funding. And I'm absolutely against that. It's just like if a bill was to come up in Congress that I had the opportunity to vote on, and it included something like a red flag law or funding Planned Parenthood or something that I totally disagree with, I would not sign that bill, and I would make it very clear, I don't care what else is in the bill. I'm not signing it. You have to break that up. That's exactly why Congress needs to break up all these spending bills, because if you're an elected official representing 750,000 people, they damn well should be able to see what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to. And that's the reason why we should not have the omnibus program. We shouldn't have continuing resolutions, because it's too easy for them just to hide under, well, I agreed with 95% of it and I didn't have any choice. I had to vote for it. Like, no, break that stuff up and force those elected to be accountable to exactly what they say yes to and what they say no to. And I would say the same thing about the UN.
Yeah, I agree with that bills being packed into other bills is kind of an issue. But with politics, really life in general, I think sometimes it's lost on others that you have to give to get, because there are varying viewpoints in America, and that's just something that we all have to contend with.
Let me give y'all an example
aren't
of this.
Going to agree.
Yeah, I'm gonna break it up here a little bit, and we're gonna take it down and not be so heavy with the topic. Let's talk about abortion. Here's the thing. I'm a staunch Republican. I love my civil liberties. I don't like my government telling me what to do. I like to pray the way I want to pray and teach my kids the things I want to teach them. I've got 4 daughters, and I've had several wives. That's the only thing I'm not good at, is staying married. The Republican platform, and I ran for Tulsa County GOP chairman here in Oklahoma last year and got my butt whooped because of this issue, one of them. The Republican platform doesn't support abortion. And it doesn't, it says it's a Judeo-Christian value platform, along with a lot of other things. My views on abortion is I don't want to kill babies. I don't want to see babies die. But who am I as a man to tell somebody else what they can and can't do with their own body? That's like telling me you have to take the jab. No, I don't. What you got on that?
Yeah. So as a man, do you take responsibility for protecting your kids and keeping them out of dangerous situations? Or if they get into dangerous situations, you're going to put your hand of protection over them?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's no different. I mean, the thing is that, again, I've said this before, but I get my worldview from the Bible, and I think it's clear. And I think we spend way too much time talking about taking away rights than we should talking about giving rights. And what our pregnant ladies need is they need support, resources, and help. They need to make sure that they've got a structure around them for situations where they do find themselves pregnant, maybe outside of a solid relationship or, a strong marriage or whatever. I believe fully and strongly that what happened with regards to, Roe v. Wade and that getting overturned after 49 years, I think that was correct. That was in the federal level. That pushes it back down to the state legislators to make their decisions. And every time that you do something like that, you have politics is always better when it's local. When you read the 10th Amendment, it very much limits the authority that the federal government has. So this stuff should be determined at the local level. And even more so, like Ron, you mentioned running for, county chair. Really, our primary responsibility, and for anybody who's watching this, the most important thing that you can do is what's happening on a county level. All your city councils, your county commissioners, your sheriff, for sure. You need a constitutional sheriff. All those local school boards, all that stuff, hospital boards, those are all the most important. And then it goes out from there. The least important is the federal level. Those are the ones that should get the least attention because they're the ones that have the least effect on what's going on locally. If you've screwed up and allowed crazy people to take over all your local seats, it doesn't matter who's in nationally. You're screwed. And so that's the focus. But back to the whole abortion issue, we have way too much focus and emphasis on who's controlling the situation, who's making the decision. I mean, if you want to get down to the brass tacks, that baby has different blood type than their mother. That makes them a very different person. And the idea that a woman would say, well, you're taking away my rights. It's like, no, I'm not taking away anything. I'm trying to defend a vulnerable human being that is inside of you. And let me take this even further. What is again, you guys know, based on what I've already said, that I'm always kind of thinking out. What is the long-term effects of being strong on having a strong stance on protecting unborn? Well, I think it drives more responsibility, right? Less promiscuity, better decisions, more solid relationships, stronger families. That's what it drives. And I think that's what's important. And when you look at what's going on in America today, the biggest problem we have is the attack on the nuclear family.
Well, here in Oklahoma, because you spoke about local stuff being one of the most important, and I agree with you. There's this gentleman named Dusty Devers. You may have seen him on Jimmy Kimmel the other night. They were making fun of him because he has a porn name or something. But he's just a newly elected state senator here, and he's put in a bunch of bills. And all of these bills, he wants to ban all pornography. He wants to make it a law that if you get a divorce in the state of Oklahoma, you have to find somebody at fault and then publicly shame them. Yeah, hang on, it gets better. He wants to ban all abortions. And so if your child gets raped by a perverted uncle over here, she has to have that baby. I don't care if she's 12 years old and it's going to kill her or not. That's God's will. She's going to have that baby. And I just, as a father and like you said, a protector of my neighbors and my family and stuff, I understand. I love Jesus. I cuss a little bit, but you have to use some common sense as well.
Yeah, there's one thing that we saw that was violated during the whole COVID thing, and that was the parent or the doctor-patient relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad because the doctors are essentially giving up their authority to the pharmaceutical, to big pharma, because what's to stop AI from taking your symptoms and applying some drug to it? I mean, the doctors are essentially going to get cut out of the whole equation, but that stuff needs to happen between doctors, and and there should be some path for that to be able to happen. But let's see, what did you start with? Because I thought maybe
the anti-porn stuff. I mean, Gus even went so far to incentivize people snitching on others. They'd pay him $10,000 for every instance of a violation.
Well, God bless him, but he needs to read the Constitution and take particular reference to the 18th Amendment, because you cannot regulate morality. If you try to regulate morality, you're going to fail every single time.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that.
It's just human nature. I mean, the 18th Amendment was eventually abolished,
It didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work, right? And so we would be much better off spending time praying for people, inviting them to church, doing the thing is, this is the deal. God has given us a responsibility, and he's given us the authority. If you read Luke 10, Jesus talks about sending out the 72, and he gave them authority to do two things. He said, I'm going to give you the ability to heal people and to cast out demons. And I believe that God still gives us authority for that today. Now, the whole thing about praying for people to heal them, that's fine. We as Americans are totally cool with that. But the whole casting out demons, you cannot talk about that. That's just totally anyway. So the thing is we have to handle this personally. This has to be personal. We have to go within our sphere of influence. We have to be active. As soon as we get done with this, I'm heading over to meet my family at church, as you guys know. And that's what we got to do. And we can't. One of the worst things, and Reagan said this, what he said, the worst 9 words or something is something like, "Hey, I'm from the government. I'm here to help," or something.
Right.
The thing is what's really bad is when I hear somebody say, "Oh, that's terrible. They should do something about that." Who are they talking about? Who is the they? They're saying,
"Thank you.
The government should fix that." It's like, well, maybe you should fix it. Let me just give you a story, very quick story.
You better hurry up.
Yeah, my oldest son was young, and I'm a hands-on guy. I love working with my hands. I love doing carpentry, building homes, and all that kind of stuff. My son was probably 8 or 10 years old or something. And there was a commercial real estate sign on this property that was near a friend of mine's property. And the sign had basically broken and fallen down. The posts were still up, but the sign itself was kind of all cattywampus, and it was a bunch of weeds growing around it and everything. And I said, let's fix that. I don't even know these commercial real estate agents, right? But the sign looks like crap. Let's stop. And so we stopped. Next time by, I grabbed a few things. I knew we were going to need some screws, whatever. And we spent a few minutes. What did it take? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. But that was the lesson. I did it as much to fix the sign as I did to teach my son. Sometimes there's things that you do in life that you don't get paid for because they're the right things to do. And that's if we could get all Americans to think more like that, then a lot of these moral issues that we're struggling with in the country would solve themselves.
I mean, I think
that's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. You've got something wrong. I can tell. Go ahead.
What the hell is a cattywampus?
I love that you said that.
Did I say cattywampus?
Yeah.
Cattywampus means it's not right. Something's not right. It's it's all messed up. It's cattywampus.
Right.
Have you ever heard that, Tim?
Yes. Yeah.
I've never heard that. I love that.
I was actually gonna comment on that. I'm like, you're one of the few people in my life that I've ever heard use that term, and it was perfectly
that's
placed.
Good. I'm glad you pointed that out, because in today's age, there's a lot of terms that I hear. I'm like, what was that? What does that mean? Do I want to know what that means?
Yeah, my daughter was talking about a pick-me girl, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't. It's crazy now. We're the, because when we grew up, our parents looked at us like we were crazy.
Yeah.
Now sometimes we look at our kids, and it's that cycle continues. And that actually brings me to another point. There's a lot of like weird things, we have like trans stuff going on and a lot of, I don't know, maybe anxiety issues with children and stuff. Do you think some of that is that they're growing up in this totally completely different world than we did, so their perspectives and stuff are just totally different from us, and now we're what our parents used to look at us as? You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
in terms of some of those, kind of social weird things that go on.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I mean, but I don't think it's just one thing. I mean, I was born in the late 60s. And I think, the family unit was generally, stronger back then, but I don't know. I mean, it's weird, the cycles that we go through in society. And I believe we've had a cycle for the last few decades that have been pretty easy for most Americans. They haven't faced a lot of challenges that weren't self-induced. As a culture, we've been pretty protected. I remember sitting in the mid 70s in front of my TV, just looking at it. And I remember watching the results of a suicide bomber in a bus in Beirut. And just thinking, wow, that's just like a world away. That kind of thing would never happen in America. But yet here we are, today. And so I think there's a combination of a lot of things that are causing our kids. I mean, you guys remember our parents blamed everything on our music. I mean, everything was Dee Schneider's fault. Like
in the games.
Yeah. All that stuff. And today it's like, okay, we've got disconnected parents. We have two mother and fathers that are working in order to support them. So that we have kids that are essentially kind of raising themselves. Then you have the instant implementation of technology. Every step forward in technology draws us apart as people. And that affects the kids, definitely, right? You have a diet that is completely off the hook.
Oh,
I mean, you have
terrible.
Almost everything these kids are eating is out of some kind of a package. Like, go get an apple. Like when I was growing up, I was told my mom I was hungry. She's like, "There's carrots in the fridge. Go get one." And the truth is, it works, right? And so our diets are completely messed up. We've got, just in terms of our, again, kind of going back to the ease with which we've lived, I think that we have a bit of brokenness in our morality. And even when you look at the church, man, the church is messed up for the most part. It's pretty bad because you have a lot of people who want good and they do good for their own lives, but they aren't doing a lot of good outside of that. And let me just give you one example. In America, we have essentially been blessed with this amazing definition of liberty and freedom, right? Chris Ann Hall defines liberty, which we can talk about that if you guys want to know, but it's really quite interesting to think about. But we have this just unique circumstance over the last 250 years to enjoy this really incredible space of liberty and freedom. Here's my question. We've spent a lot of years sending missionaries around the world to talk about the gospel and to share Jesus, which I totally agree with. And I've done it myself, and I'm completely for that. But why is it that we have done almost nothing to help other countries, 200 and some countries around the world, to understand the concepts and the foundation of freedom and our natural rights that apply to everyone, regardless of whether you're American or not? Why have we not done any better? Why have we not essentially done anything to help those other countries around the world to be able to share in that same truth and that same freedom and liberty that we have? Now, we as citizens, we shouldn't rely on our government to do that, because you can see how they screw it up. They go in and they're all authoritarian, and they take over elections, and they manipulate societies. They do all this stuff. Well, what if we did it as individuals? What if we made friends with people in China and we started communicating with them and helping them to be able to build this understanding of their natural rights, such that the people of North Korea could stand up and overthrow their own tyrannical government, just as it says in the Declaration of Independence? And so why haven't we done more with that? And when I look at today's modern American church, I see a bunch of weak people who are not ready to fight, who are not ready to defend the gospel, that a lot of them don't even particularly understand what it is that they believe, but yet they're trying to be good people and they show up to church every Sunday, actually doing.
We're losing you a little bit. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay. That last part cut out. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, it was just saying, like, what is it that the modern American church member is really doing? Now, this is not broad brush, right? There are some good people, you know, that kind of thing. They're breaking their backs to do a lot of really great things. And I mean, even just basic things like, you know, taking in an orphan or being a foster parent or different things like that they can do, which are good. But in general, are we really as passionate about the gospel and about those things and about understanding how valuable it is, this gift that God has given us in terms of our liberty and our freedom? Or are we just kind of going through the motions and enjoying the benefits for ourselves? That's not what God's called us.
Well, I've got a point that I want to make right after you're done, Ron.
Yeah, because Tim, when I ran for Tulsa County GOP, Tim he was a registered liberal Democrat, but he switched parties to support me. And he's more moderate liberal and I'm more moderate conservative. So we kind of mesh on some things, but we were standing in this big church where we were having the convention. And this gentleman, I don't know if you know about Tim or not, but Tim is the only parent in Oklahoma that I know of, maybe even the nation, that got school policy changed in Owasso, Oklahoma, that says pornography is not allowed. We have to remove these books. And now every graphic novel that gets shipped to the school has to be reviewed first before it's even put on a shelf, because we had some nasty books out here.
Yeah.
And Tim got them taken down. So we're standing in this church, and these people are coming up to me and Tim because we're semi-famous out here. And this gentleman walked up to Tim, shook his hand, and said, "Aren't you the guy that had pornography removed out of schools?" And Tim said, Yeah, that's me. That was a national story. He said, "But you don't believe in God. You're an atheist. Why would you want to remove pornography if you're an atheist?" And that offended me standing next to Tim, because why would somebody not have morals and integrity just because they're not religious? I don't think morals and integrity are hand in hand with being religious, is what I'm saying. I think we're all born knowing not to kill somebody. And it just really offended me that this gentleman standing in this church was judging Tim's morals and integrity instead of just saying, "Thank you for doing what was right."
Yeah, he was nice about it, but it was a little weird. And I was like, it was in that moment that I realized there are people that genuinely believe that the only way to be a moral person is to be religious. And I don't know. I don't understand that. But, you know, back to this thing with, you know, kind of proselytizing freedom and personal rights across the world. First of all, we've got to do something, and this is just my take on it. We have to do something to allow families to be able to have more time, because currently it's just so expensive to live, and two people now have to work for what people could do with one income back, you know, in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
So now you've got both parents working, and then they have to pay for childcare. So now they're not even raising the kids. And this is just completely separate from, any religious aspect. So there's got to be some kind of way where we can, I don't know, rein the inflation back in, or increase the wages, or hold companies to account to make sure that the people that work for them can afford to live without having two incomes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that has to do with it. People just really don't have time. And by the time they're finished working, they're so exhausted at the end of the day that they just want to sit down and just do nothing. So,
yeah.
And I think maybe AI will come in handy with this, because the way I see 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, we're going to lose truck drivers. We're going to lose Uber drivers. We're going to lose riders, doctors, possibly even nurses, to AI things, to robots and such.
Yeah.
So that maybe the solution is some kind of a universal basic income, because if you lose 40% of the workforce to a robot, then you're going to have a lot of people unemployed. So you're going to have to give them something so they can live. But now, instead of just sitting around doing nothing, I think most people will want to fulfill their time. So at that moment, then they can actually work a little bit to make up the difference, because the UBI isn't going to cover everything, obviously. But then they can spend the rest of the time doing the things that you just talked about. What do you think of that?
Boy, I just feel like you guys stacked about 3,000 pounds on me there, Ron, starting with the, just this whole concept of what is the effect of your faith? I mean, that's a whole nother show, I think, just kind of like diving into
I agree.
What is, and even, Tim, some of your comments really kind of challenges me to think about that. But it would be a longer discussion to sort of get into it. And so I'm not going to dive into that, but I will. Yeah.
I know you got to go to church, and I want to talk to you real quick before you leave. Your opponent. Do you have anything that we need to know about your opponent or about you, the goals, anything different that you're better, he's worse, he's better, you're worse?
Yeah, I do want to get onto that. Let me just answer that, and I'll get through it. But let me also just make sure I respond to Tim's comments. Capitalism would be contrary to some kind of a UBI. The part of the reason why that's important to say is that you guys, all of us are men. We know that there's some sense of gratification that we get by, doing stuff, whether it's chopping firewood or painting a room or building something or doing something. We really feel more manly. We feel stronger. We feel more human when we get to do stuff, right? Not pushing paper on our computer or playing a video game, doing whatever. It's actually doing stuff. And so there is, you touched on it. People aren't just going to want to sit around, even if everything can somehow get done. So anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. And I'll also say there are some flaws with capitalism. So it would be another good discussion, because I've been in business for 25 years. I love capitalism. I think it's wonderful, but there are some flaws with it that we have to deal with. And so I think I agree with you in that it's not, both sides aren't perfect. So again, more fodder for more discussion, but so I'm running against a guy named Dan Newhouse. His dad entered politics when he was 10 years old. So he grew up in that. And then, he became a state legislator here in Washington State. And then, he did some other stuff. I think it was a lands commissioner or something like that under a Democrat governor. And then he went to Congress, and he's been in Congress for 10 years. And his voting record is dismal. If you look at it's roughly, he votes with the Democrats close to half the time. And in today's age, that's pretty tough. He was one of the 10 Republicans that voted to impeach President Trump. He's voted for red flag law. He's voted to fund Planned Parenthood many times. He is one of the biggest spenders in Congress. And somehow through all that spending, he's become, this is based on information available on the web, he has gone from a net worth of around $1 million to something it's estimated to be around $27 million now in 10 years. Like, how does that happen when you only make whatever it is, $180,000 a year as a congressman? And so again, I would ask every single bill that's for spending that comes across his desk, he always has an opportunity. He always wants to spend. And he violates a lot of the values that we believe here in Central Washington, conservative, values that are, again, based on a lot of the things that we believe America was founded on. And so to be in one of the most conservative districts in the country and to have a representative who is mediocre at best, the fit is not right. And he's already attacking me because I'm head to head. Last cycle I ran, and there were I think there was 8 candidates total, and it was just a complete disaster. And he was able to get, I think he got through on 24% of the vote or something like that. It was worse than Liz Cheney in Wyoming. But because there were so many candidates, it was all just really broken up. In the most conservative district in the West Coast, the Democrat actually got, there was just one Democrat running. He got more more votes than anybody else because the conservative or the Republican side was broken up so much.
Wow.
Now it's just him and I head to head, and there isn't even a Democrat declared, and it doesn't look like there's going to be. And so it puts him in a spot where he's in big trouble. Well, just yesterday, I got a call from a friend in the district who said they got a phone call from this random number, and they were talking about how great Dan Newhouse was, and they wanted to tell him like 5 bad things about me, and they were all lies. And so he's got unlimited funds. He sends out postcards that are paid for by Congress. He lies on those postcards constantly. And he's taking my ideas. I can give you multiple areas where he's taken from debates that we've done or stuff that I've put out. He takes his staff has even come to me.
Wow.
And so he takes my ideas and implements them. And my message to people in Central Washington and really people around the country is support my campaign, send $20, vote for me if you're in the district, because we shouldn't have a guy who's ineffective as this guy, somebody who doesn't represent our values and somebody who's literally taking my ideas and putting them in when he's been a politician his whole life. He doesn't have the life experience that I have. That's the reason why I have all the ideas. Well, send me to Congress for a few years. I believe in term limits. I'll find somebody better than me to replace me after 2 or 3 cycles, and then we can move on.
I mean, sounds like a reasonable pitch to me. We're not from Washington, so we don't really have a dog in that fight. But, sir,
well,
I wish you the
family
best.
there, but they're
that.
liberals living in Seattle.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, because we have some of those here that a lot of people complain about. Where they're, they don't always vote the way that people in their area should.
Yeah, it's confusing and it can create tension. But that's where this title Rhino has come from, Republican in name only. And what they're saying is your votes don't represent our values. That's essentially what they're saying. And I think the American people are standing up saying, we want to send people that align with our values. And if you want to have a strong voice, a strong conservative voice in Congress, it doesn't matter where you're at in the country, you can still send my campaign $20.
Well, how did they do that?
Just go to my website. You guys can put it up on the thing. It's jerrodforcongress.com or jerrodsessler.com. And, I appreciate the support. I sold my company. I haven't had a paycheck for 3 years. We've been working on this, traveling, doing all this stuff, trying to save our country. And I hate asking for money, trust me, but we're hundreds of thousands of dollars into this. And I haven't had an income for 3 years. I was just asked yesterday, somebody said, well, how much money would you have made the last 3 years if you would have stayed in business? And it's like, it's sad to think about, but here's how I look at it. I wouldn't have an opportunity to do any of this if it wasn't for this great country. And so I don't care what it costs to be able to stand up for it and to make a difference. I'm willing to take that on.
Good on you.
Love it. Yeah. And, serving your country doesn't always come with, a shiny new button or a gold pen. So,
yeah.
Now, was Dan Newhouse a millionaire prior to getting into Congress?
He, according to his public financial reports, because all federal candidates and members elected have to file these annual reports. And if you go back to when he entered Congress, his report showed that he was worth roughly $1 million or a little bit less. His family owns a farm here not far from where I live.
Newhouse Farms.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's pretty much where it was at. But now you look at his reports and there's like a 5-year delay on when they become public record. Yeah. And so, but you look at him and it's like, he just has pages and pages of all these investment accounts. It's like, what? Like why do you have more than one? Like if you're going to invest in something, or it's like, but he's just got pages and it's like, what is all this about? It's just, I feel like it's just intentional confusion.
Crazy. Yeah. I think the last I looked at it was like $13 million or something.
But they extrapolated out and they estimate that today he's worth something like 27 million, which I don't know. That's just, but the point is, like, even if it was only 5 million or 10 million, it's like, how do you go from, like, when Obama went into office, he was worth like $1.5 million, and he comes out 8 years later worth 85 million or something like that.
Right.
How do you do that? First of all, I want to know only from the standpoint that I can tell other people how they're doing it. I don't want to. You know,
I was fixing to say, well, you fixing to go find out. Let me know too.
Yeah, I want to run my own business. I actually was starting another business before I decided to do this, and I basically scuttled it. But it's a really cool business model, and I want to do it. And I think there'll still be an opportunity for it in a few years. So I want to go do this. I want to help save our country, get things started in the right direction. That's the other thing, is I don't think this is a short fight. We've got 15 to 20 years ahead of us where we're going to be fighting against these crazy people who want to drive America off a cliff. And it's only going to get worse, because big tech's going to get bigger, big pharma's going to get bigger, globalists are going to get more powerful, and it's going to take a lot of effort for us to stand up and fight. But I don't envision myself dying in Congress. I want to come back home. I've got beautiful visions for what I want to do with the rest of my life. I just want to fight for a few years, and then, as I said, find somebody better than myself that can take over and run it from there.
That sounds great. Well, Jerrod, I'm going to go ahead. If you want to hang around, we can chat for a moment after the show, or if you need to run, that's cool. But I'll go ahead and pull you out, and we're going to do our outro.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you guys are doing.
All righty. Bye-bye. Ron, thank you for showing up here today. I know you were probably busy too, but did you have any last words for everybody?
When you get out of church, you need to go hit that subscribe button, share the feed, all that kind of stuff. I know everybody was in church for the last hour here.
And go check out Jerrod's webpage. He's got videos and stuff. He goes over all the issues. He did a video for all of it, so it's real easy to follow.
All right. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate you.
Thank you to everybody for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.
Later.
Peace.